Hello, this is Mr. Johnson, and I'm going to give you an overview of Adobe Illustrator. The version of Illustrator we are using is CS5 for this model. Some students could be on to the Creative Cloud Adobe CC, but you'll see a lot of similarities. I think this tutorial can also be used for the Creative Cloud series as well. So to begin, like any PC software, we have a menu bar at the top. In this menu bar, you'll find all the different options for Illustrator. File typically includes new, open, close, save as, print, and of course exit. Edit is where you'll find a lot of things to do to edit your document. Object, this is where we can go in and transform, arrange, group, and ungroup. So most things to do with anything that you have created, that object that you have created. Type, a lot of stuff for fonts will be found underneath the top. Select, in select you'll see that there is selection options like select all. And notice in all of these pull downs how they have shortcut keys to the right. So select all, shortcut key is Control plus A. Deselect is a popular thing to use in Illustrator. Selecting the inverse, selecting the opposite of what you have selected in a document. Effects are found next. Any kind of viewing options. So a lot of people like to see things like rulers shown, for example. So they want to see how big it is on the page. So you can show rulers here. Smart guides are something that I'll show in a future lesson that talks about how you can help align things up with the smart guides that are in Illustrator. Lastly is window. In window you'll find anything that has to do with palettes. Palettes are these things located out here. Along with your tools you'll see are also indicated. Anything with a check mark will be turned on. So once we actually get into the document, you'll see that control will show up right underneath your menu bar, right in this area underneath the menu bar. And then tools are checked. For example, if I go in and turn on my navigator, you'll see that the navigator popped out. So if ever you're missing a palette, as these are called, you can find them under the window document. Okay, let's get into setting up a document. So I'm going to come up here to File. Right now, I have no drawing space. I need to come up here to File and go New. Once I open up a new document, it gives me the name of the document, or it prompts me to name the document. This is not naming the file. That's something that some students get confused with. This is just naming the document that you're working on. So, or the piece of work that you're working on. So a lot of times I just ignore this, maybe drop in a number, maybe drop in a letter. It's completely up to you. Down here under number of artboards, we typically, probably 90% of the time, work with one artboard. But in cases of where you maybe want to design the front and back of something, maybe the front and back of a t-shirt, you could change to 2 artboards, so now you can design the front and back. Down underneath the pull-down menu here, it asks for size. We typically work with letter size, since that's what we print off with, do a lot of our prototyping, see what it looks like before we go to large format prints. But if you wanted a different format print, you could go in and pick a bigger size, especially if you have a printer that has different size paper options. Now lastly, underneath depending on what size you pull down, it'll automatically change for you to match up. So our letter size is 8.5 by 11. Notice your units. In the pull down menu, there's lots of different types of units we can choose, but inches are the ones we are most familiar with. So inches at this point is what I would suggest students always switch their units to. Lastly is orientation. Orientation is, do you want it to be portrait or do you want it to be landscape? Portrait is up and down, landscape is left to right. Either one works. I think your teacher will probably tell you which orientation they like. I typically stay with a vertical portrait orientation. And then down here is any kind of bleeds and everything, and for the most part, for our beginning students, we leave those alone, and we keep them as zeros. So for this, let's click OK. Notice how the board changes. This black box, or sorry, this little rectangle is your paper. So even though this is kind of an off-white, this is kind of a brighter white, whatever in the bright white area, that is called your art board. And that is what will be printed. If I were to take a brush tool and draw something like this, all you would see is this area that would print out on the paper. Out here, if I draw some sort of star, that is not going to be included on the paper when you print it. So you need to be sure to stay within this frame, your artboard frame, when you are designing.